Hello and welcome to Rights and Recourse, a program that tackles issues affecting your rights and matters of legal recourse. My name is Dumila Matez. Remember, you can also be part of our discussion by tweeting us at Rights and Recourse or calling our studio line on 011 714 5497 or 5498. Alternatively, email your thoughts to rightsandrecourse@sabc.co.za. South Africans have less than a week, that is until 19th of June, to comment on the Department of Basic Education's draft national policy on HIV, sexually transmitted infections and tuberculosis on education. The plan aims to bring about sexual and reproductive health education and services to learners, all with a view to combating HIV, sexually transmitted diseases and TB, including teenage pregnancies. One of the key stakeholders in the battle, Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, had this to say at the AIDS conference in Durban.
Because this is a youth month, we are going to launch an app which will enable us to have direct communication with young people, to be able to serve them about reproductive health and rights, HIV, counseling and testing, problems of abortion, teenage pregnancy, about their health. But this new company which we found in India started manufacturing. And as I'm speaking to you today, they have delivered the first batches of BCG. It has been delivered a week ago. But unfortunately, I can't issue those batches to the health facilities because it must still undergo quality control.
Well, that's exactly what we intended to do, to dedicate this program to June 16. To talk to us more about the Department of Basic Education's national draft policy on HIV, STIs and TB in education, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Faith Khumalo, Chief Director for Care and Support in Schools from the Department of Basic Education. We also welcome Nombulelo Nyathela, spokesperson from the Equal Education. We are also pleased to be joined by Nomusa AMB, Media Officer from the South African Democratic Teachers Union, SATU. Ladies, welcome, and once more, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
The first question, probably one should say, the department must be commended for the foresight and the recognition that education is not only about blackboards and books, but also about well-being of a generation that carries our hopes. What format did the strategy take to compile? Did we have a comprehensive, inclusive consultation process, or did we just leave it to the work of consultants?
Yes, once again, thank you very much for having the department. Good afternoon to everybody. This has been a long process to come to this draft document. It's a process that we started back in 2009 when we were consulting on a strategy for HIV and TB in the sector. And we held wide-ranging consultation with all the relevant stakeholders within education. Our Parents Association through the school governing bodies. We also consulted with our educators through the teacher unions. We spoke to other key stakeholders in HIV, which includes the South African National AIDS Council, the Department of Health, Social Development, academics and researchers. And as we were consulting on the strategy, people began to give us input that was of a policy nature. Because as you might know, the current policy that is in effect is one that was adopted in 1999. Now that is a long time ago, and the world has changed remarkably since then. And in fact, our own programs in schools have evolved, and they are far ahead of the policy position. So it was really very important then for us, as we're finalizing the strategy and implementing it, that one of the very first key activities was for us to revise the 1999 policy. So all that input that we received through that consultation process has been put into the current draft. And we also undertook further consultation. In fact, once we had developed the draft, we held tri-provincial consultations, once again with those range of stakeholders, as well as learner formations. It's important for me to indicate that we've spoken to young people themselves and heard their voice. And sometimes on matters of sexual and reproductive health, you find that parents have one viewpoint and young people have a different viewpoint. And for us, it was important that all those voices found expression, and they were put then into the policy draft on the table.
Interesting to know, probably one should ask, is the policy aimed only at learners, or is it also aimed at parents, guardians, and teachers?
Yes. A departure from the 1999 policy, which only really focused on the learners within the schooling system. This draft on the table is targeting all the role players within education. So it's targeted at the learners because our primary responsibility is really to them. Importantly also, our primary responsibility has to be to the human resource without whom education doesn't happen. So teachers are central, and we're saying that the department as employer must equally take responsibility to make sure that teachers have the knowledge and the skills to look after themselves first, and then secondly, to be able to provide the teaching that is required.
No, we also, no, finally, go ahead. Yes, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say
apologies.
that the parents are really key stakeholders, because anything that happens in the school environment must be with their guidance. And we feel that because sexuality education must start at home, we must make sure that our parents are also part of us, so that as a collective, the educator, the school environment, and the parents can together nurture the child, and we can have a common script that we talk to as we assist them in their sexuality.
Nomusa, SARTU, the teachers' organization, were they happy with the level of consultation that came through from the department on this policy?
First of all, before I start, let me say we commended the department for coming up with this document. And we are glad that it is a draft. It's not a complete, it's not a complete policy.
So you can still make
So we can still
input.
make inputs. From looking at the draft, we felt, although she has mentioned that it touches on everybody, but we feel it touches a lot on the school. It touches a lot on the teacher. The teacher and the school is central to this. So we feel we should be given more platform, or we should be given more time to look at this and make input on this. For instance, there are issues, for instance, the issues of the distribution of condoms in the schools. You know, we at the end of it, we are going to be the ones who will be asked to account, who will be asked to talk about it. And we have responded to this to say we feel, you know, although it is at the school, we feel some issues start at the home. We are teaching learners who come from different backgrounds, religiously, culturally, and all. And what is happening today is that parents are so well-learned, or they know so much. Parents, they take us to court, you know, to say you have, you know, be there for the distribution of these condoms. We can find ourselves being, you know, taken to court by the parents.
We'll come to the other issues pertaining to the policy. But let me go to Nombulelo from Equal Education. Is the step by the department part of the norms and standards that Equal Education normally talk about, that government should begin to implement these things that are in books, that are in documents?
Well, this is not part of the norms and standards that we've been campaigning about per se, because they speak directly to infrastructure. Broadly, of course, it all ties in, just like education is a very broad thing, but I think this is a very specific thing. We have welcomed this policy, this progressive step by the department, and obviously we know that the department has been getting a lot of backlash from the conservatives in the country, but I think we need to stand very firm and say that, you know, we have been advocating for a very long time to have our learners have access to these type of things, have access to sexual education, have access to condoms, because actually not having access is a direct violation of the learners' rights. So we welcome this progressive step. We think that we have a few concerns, of course, in the policy. We have made our submission. We have spoken on the issue of access. We don't know what the department means by that. And we have spoken about what we think is restrictive access, the making use of the mobile clinics, of course. I'm happy that Dr. Faith is saying that she has spoken, they have consulted with learners, because we were concerned that actually there was no thorough consultation with learners. And of course, this is what every policy requires of us in the country. Every piece of legislation, every piece of policy making process must have consultation, and learners being a huge stakeholder in this. So I think that obviously going forward, we have to, you know, sort of dot the I's and cross the T's. We really need to look closely zoom into those small details like their distribution, because I know that there is of condoms, because there is a lot of tension. Dr. Faith says there's research supporting the fact that what is said in the policy, but we also have counter research that says that, for example, learners will not go and get condoms if there is an authority figure. So we're not sure if they have to get them from nurses, will they make use of them, etc. So, yeah.
Well, the question I wanted to ask Dr. Khumalo was, obviously you are dealing here with high school learners and primary school learners. Is there a differentiation in the policy around that?
Yes, there is, and there has to be. And the principle that we believe is really important is that sexuality education has to be age appropriate. It also has to be appropriate to the culture and the context within which it is provided. However, all that considered, we always have to remember the right of the child to health and well-being, and that part of our responsibility as education is to give them the knowledge and the skills to be able to take important life decisions in a safe manner when they are ready to do so. So the content and the explicitness of the subject will vary as you grow older. So in the foundation phase, it really would be mainly around anatomy and your body parts and the differences between male and female. And us beginning to name our body parts for what they are called. Because we have very high levels of sexual violence in our country, and it is important that our children know what is good and bad touching so that they can protect themselves. As they grow older into high school, then we have to begin to talk to young people a little bit more in detail, noting that in South Africa today, the average age of sexual debut, first sexual encounter, is 14 years, and that's when they are in grade 8. And all our research tells us that at least 2 years prior to initiation, you must begin to talk to young people. So we have to start the conversation in primary school and obviously deal a lot more with it in secondary school.
Well, if you'd like to be part of our discussion, you can call us on 011 714 5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Recourse, or email us, email your thoughts to recourse@sabc.co.za. After the break, we'll hear from Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa. Welcome back. Before we continue our discussion, let's hear what the Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa had to say about the country's success in the fight against the disease.
This conference is taking place at a critical moment in our collective struggle as a nation against HIV and AIDS and tuberculosis. In many ways, we are what you could say at an inflection point. Thanks to the progress we have made, thanks to partnerships we have forged along the way, thanks to the resources that we have collectively mobilized, we now know that the fight against HIV, AIDS, and TB can indeed be won if we continue to be determined to win this struggle, having moved away from our denialism and having resolve that we are going to engage in this struggle, it can be won, that is for sure. The question that we must ask at this conference is whether we have the means, whether we have the will, whether we have the knowledge and the courage to prevail.
Well, yes, do we have the will and the courage to prevail? Dr. Kumar.
We do. We do. I mean, I was fortunate that I was in the audience when the Deputy President was making that speech. And the theme of the conference was reflection, refocus, renewal. And I think we spent the whole week kind of looking back at what has been our collective response on HIV. And we have agreed that the unfinished business largely is around prevention of HIV, because we've done very well on access to treatment. And the challenges are to make sure that those are on treatment, stay on it, and they get continued supplies and are supported. We are not doing well on prevention at all. And this is where our sector, education, has a key responsibility. And I think this draft policy comes right at the right time for all of us when we as a country are really focusing on the problems that confront young people around their sexual and reproductive health, and saying that perhaps now, once and for all, we must deal with these issues and, like some young people say, get over our denial that young people are having sex, and we need to assist them to do that responsibly if they do. But more importantly, I think we also are advocating for them to delay sexual debut. They must really try very hard to not have sex as early as they are doing at the moment.
Nombulelo, we spoke earlier about the fact that education is not only a blackboard and books, it's to develop the complete person. Is this policy by the department an indication of where we should be going?
Definitely, and I think that the department, that's one of the things the department has been doing very well, is trying to make education comprehensive and very holistic. One of the things that we found, though, in SACMEC, which is a regional assessment that sort of assesses a range of things, but one of the things it assesses is teacher knowledge content. And when it assessed teacher knowledge content for things like LO, particularly on HIV and AIDS content knowledge, it found that teachers had 100% knowledge content. So the teachers know the information, they know exactly what is going on. But that same assessment done with the learners that were taking that assessment, they found that the knowledge content for those learners is at about 30%. The gap is huge. That means that even though the teachers know how to impart, know the knowledge, either they don't know how to impart it, or they're not comfortable enough to impart it. And that's where what Dr. Faith is saying comes in, where, for example, we needed very age appropriate, so that teachers are also comfortable to sort of teach this. We need it very comprehensive, but we need it very relevant as well. So that, like Dr. Faith is saying, how do we name things? You know, when a child can't describe what happened to them in a rape situation, that is one of the problems. So I think that's definitely one of the things we need to be looking at in this policy, is if the teachers are the ones that are tasked with teaching the sex education, it needs to be quite an intensive process of making sure that they can actually impart the knowledge to the learners in a way that they get it as well.
Ms. Tembi, I've heard teachers say, the department expects us, the department and the parents expect us, and you alluded to that earlier, expect us to be social workers, to be teachers, to be parents, to be everything else except for teaching children in schools.
On that, yes, there's a lot that is expected of us, but we feel this can be resolved by ensuring that every department comes to play. It's not only the Department of Education, the Department of Health, the Department of Social Services need to come to play, because we need services like nursing services in school, we need social work services in schools, those need to come. But on the issue of to take what she has said about the issue of teaching and content and what is happening in school, we commend the department for what is happening in our schools. You know, this has brought a situation where we are teaming up with schools in America you know, the AFT, American Federation of Teachers, came to visit this country about 5 years ago, and they were impressed about the level of teaching of this in our schools. And they said in America it is not like this, it's not this specific. And we now have a relationship with a school in Mammenberg and another school in California, where not only teachers are exchanging information, but also learners are exchanging information. We commend government, you know, on that, and we are trying our best to ensure that whatever is being taught should be appropriate to the age of learners. You know, like for instance, the issue, I can come back to the issue of condoms. You know, the policy, the draft policy says condoms should be distributed to every learner in school. We are saying no, it cannot be every learner. It should be age appropriate.
We'll come to the issue of condoms because I've got a special section of that. But I want to go back to something, Dr. Faith. It's very rare you come to a program and you find everybody say, we'd like to commend the department. There's something must be wrong.
Yeah.
So, last week I had a very adversarial discussion here with the department and the governing body, the school's governing body. And I'm actually surprised that everybody is sitting here saying we commend the government. I also started by saying we want to commend the department.
Yes, you know, and I think it is probably evidence of the work that we've done before we got to this point. You know, we really have consulted widely on this draft, and we've attempted very hard to put everything on the table. And the partnership, you know, that we have, you know, with the teacher unions and our parents is really, and other critical stakeholders in education, is very, very important to us. And so we all the time want to work towards that. But the evidence is on the table of where South Africa needs to go on this matter. And I think that's what really assisting us. I want to come briefly to the issue of the curriculum, because we really hold the curriculum dearly to our hearts, because we know that it's our, you know, it's our tool for really making sure that we transmit the knowledge and the skills that we want throughout the schooling system. So in fact, at the AIDS conference, we spent the whole Monday, the pre-conference, looking at life orientation, and in particular looking at the content of HIV and sexuality education in there, and how we can assist and bridge this gap, because you're quite right, we've realized that the gap between the teacher knowledge but also the degree to which they are able to impart that knowledge. And so we want to bridge that. And one of the things we are doing is actually developing scripted lesson plans for teachers. So it tells you in a specific and a, you know, detailed manner of how you manage that lesson, so that there's not an opportunity to deviate too much, but also to skip sections that are uncomfortable for you, so that there's a possibility for every child to receive the full content of the curriculum.
Can I throw a spanner in the works? The spanner in the works is there are specific aspects that are referenced in the Children's Act, especially with regard to sexuality. To what extent did the development of this strategy take the provisions of this Act into account?
We've looked at various legislation, including the Children's Act. One of the things that the Children's Act, for example, says is that if you are 12 years and older, you are able to consent yourself to a range of health services, including HIV, counseling and testing, in fact. And so we've recognized that there would be 12-year-olds that have the maturity to be able to take these decisions by themselves. However, as a department and working with our SGBs, we feel that it is important that we counsel and advise any young person to first of all also have that conversation with a trusted elder. And we're saying trusted elder because it may, sometimes we have children, you know, who are abused in their home situation. So we can't dictate and say it must be A, B, and C. However, we feel that it is important that they have the social support, that before you take a decision that you want to have an HIV test, for example, that you consult with your family and support system, so that in the event you have a test result that may not be what you want, then we are able to assist you and you can have a primary source of support.
Nomusa,
so all those things have been considered.
My apologies once again. Nomusa and Nombulelo, if the Children's Act says a child who is 12 years old can make a distinction between what's wrong and what is right, what's wrong with distributing condoms to them or teach them about condoms?
The issue is that it's not just us only, it's also, we must remember that the child comes from a home. Parents should be involved. parents should also play a role. So it's not that it's just our own issue, because parents they can take us to court. We need to get their consent too. Yeah.
You're very worried about this court system.
I think that there's, first of all, the biggest debate, the biggest argument against the distribution of condoms has been the age-old discussion and debate that, you know, distribution of condoms will promote promiscuity. There's absolutely no research or evidence that supports this, and I think that one of the ladies from Love Life in one of these conferences said something so profound. She said that the worst that can happen with this distribution is that nothing happens. That's the worst. That means that there's no change, that learners don't use them. That's the worst that can happen. But the best thing that can happen is that we curb the infection rate, which really starts at the age of 14. That's where the new infections happen. And I think that, but we have evidence. There's evidence that shows that learners are having, like Dr. Faith was saying, that they have sexual debuts at 14, and that actually 35% of them already told us that they're having sex. I mean, there's absolutely nothing that stops the distribution, in my view.
Well, we'll come back to you as soon when we come back from the break. If you'd like to join us in today's discussion, please call us on 011-714-5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Recourse. We'll be back after the break.
That goal was outstanding.
Made so much dust that I couldn't see, and I hit a stone and we had a puncture.
Catch all these and more every day on Sports Live at 8:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back, and let's now hear what the Twitter community has to say about this very burning issue. Teddy, 31st May, says, Rights and Recourse, most definitely. They already have the wrong info before coming to you, and then you just confirm it is right, whichever way. I'm not definitely sure what she says there. As a parent, I always feel obliged to tell my boy about protecting himself. It's our duty as parents to raise such questions. Specifically, Sangweni says it's a good idea, because some of in those levels are already sexually active. I think everybody there is making reference to the condoms issue. No, Musa, you are burning to say something.
We have no problem with our problem with the condom issue is that the draft policy is just too wide in saying every learner should access it. Can you imagine a grade 3 learner accessing them? It would be like a toy to them, you know. So
I can see already some of them taking the condoms and opening them up and blow them.
Yes, and blowing them up. So we are saying everything should be age appropriate. As the law says, it should start at the age, you know, like the Child Care Act started, 12 and 14 at that time. Not that just every learner should. You know.
Dr. Faith, you are here. This is a form. This is a way of consulting
Absolutely.
This program. Yes, you want to take up what Nomusa was saying.
Yes, and I mean, I think we really do welcome all views, you know, because this is our opportunity to make sure that we end up with a policy that we all largely support and we can all implement, because when we start talking about the implementation imperatives, it's going to require all of us to work in sync, including other government departments. However, it's important for us to indicate what the evidence is, what the research says. There is no research, like my colleague has said, that indicates that if you provide sexuality education and you provide access to condoms, that leads directly into sexual activity. In fact, the evidence that exists internationally is in the opposite direction. It says that young people who have the knowledge and are provided access to a range of sexual and reproductive health services, in fact, delay having sex. And some of them who have already started sometimes stop. And it also decreases the number of sexual partners. So I think as a government, we really are working on the evidence, because that's our responsibility to do in putting things on the table.
You mentioned the key pillars. My apologies. You mentioned the key pillars. Can you take us through the key pillars that are actually supporting this strategy?
You mean within the strategy?
Within the strategy, yes.
Okay. The key thing to say about the strategy is that, we focus quite largely around sexual and reproductive health education and services, and that's important. We need to do that. But the strategy also addresses another important part of our twin epidemics, and that is TB. And I think we shouldn't forget that for the first time as education, we're putting a policy position on how we're going to address TB within our education system. And it's work that we want to make sure that we do and take that forward. Around the pillars of the strategy, obviously we want to make sure that all education managers take this responsibility to themselves, because if we don't address HIV inherently within the sector, our systemic problems are only going to get worse, other than the fact that we won't be dealing with HIV prevention as a country. So we're seeing it as a core management function for all managers within the system, right from national down to school level, that they must take the responsibility, because I think we all can agree that up to now HIV has always been seen as the business of some people who have that word HIV in their designation. So we wanted to mainstream the response and make sure that we deal with it throughout all our policies and our management practices. Prevention must obviously be at the front of that. And so we're talking issues of information, access to information, but also to the education, which is in the curriculum, as well as peer education programs. We mustn't forget that those are also implemented in schools. And then the services that we want the Department of Health largely to be responsible for, making sure that our health services are adolescent friendly, that they are non-judgmental when young people go in there and ask for services, that we are welcoming to them and provide them with the service first before judging why it is that they are there for that. And the responsibility on us as education is to make sure that that relationship between the health and education is strong, to enable the referral mechanisms to happen, because it's all in our best interest.
I think I seem to hear, Nomulelo, tell me if I'm wrong, I seem to hear Dr. Faith saying they would like to see the strategy placed into a broader curriculum issue. Yes. So that it is not a standalone thing. Yes. It's part of the curriculum. For instance, earlier I spoke about hygiene. Yes. I spoke about the wash your hands syndrome that I prefaced around the issue of a broken window syndrome when you fight crime. Isn't that what the department is trying to do?
I'm pretty sure that is exactly what the department is trying to do, but I think that HIV, people mustn't think that HIV and AIDS is not covered currently in the curriculum. It is covered. I think that what the department is discussing now is the extent to which it's covered and the depth in which it's covered. And I think those are the nitty-gritties that they will iron out. But I think just to say, Dr. Faith, she speaks about the pillars. By the way, nowhere in the policy, it does speak about TB, which is great, because it does sort of go hand in hand. But nowhere in the policy do we speak about teenage pregnancy, which is one of there's no mention of the word pregnancy in the policy, which is a huge thing, because huge dropout rates, but also infection rates also go hand in hand with the fact that teenagers are falling pregnant in schools, young girls, particularly young black girls, dropping out of school. So that is another huge concern we have. And of course, this still comes back to the issue of what they mean by access. And we are not sure, I think that it's good that the Department of Basic Education wants to have this relationship with the Department of Health, but to what extent can is the Department of Health stretched? Can the integrated health plan really be used in this context? Do we have enough nurses? Do we have enough transport for these nurses to get to the schools and the health clinics? And how is it going to work? And I think that we really need to be very clear on this, on how it's going to work, such that when there is a rollout, everyone is satisfied.
Before Dr. Faith responds, Nomusa, earlier we spoke about, Nombulelo made reference to that now, that there's going to be, and Dr. Faith too, that there's going to be mobile clinics coming to the schools. And how is that interfering with the teaching, for instance?
I think there needs to be consultation as to when this thing can take place, and really, for instance, issues like the issues of testing and all that. As to, yes, the mobile clinic can be there, but is the learner prepared enough, you know, psychologically? Where are social services to ensure that the learner gets enough counseling so that she or he be able to take or you know, the results thereof and continue with the learning? There's going to be a lot of support to ensure that the learners, whatever will come out, won't disturb, you know, their learning. And also the issue of times and timetables and all needs to be looked at.
No, just hold on, let's take this call from Sidwell. Sidwell, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm all right. I just want to make a comment.
Go ahead.
On what Faith Kumalo has just said. On the evidence that they have got based on the research and analysis that they have done. It's a very good point, because most of the young people and most of the parents are against the issue of condoms being provided to schools, because we parents, or as parents, we do not have the evidence that she is talking about. That, you know, we do not know whether this thing has worked before, and whether it will bring positive results. So I just wanted to comment on that issue, that if there is a clear evidence and you know, the findings have been clearly obtained. That
thank you very much, Sidwell.
Yes.
We got the gist of your questions. We got the gist of your question. Dr. Faith?
Yes. I mean, thank you very much to the caller. He said that, you know, most parents are against the distribution of condoms. I must indicate that since the draft has been gazetted, I think many of us within the department were expecting that all parents, you know, and all adults will be against it. We've just come from the AIDS conference, and overwhelmingly, those adults who were in that space were supportive of the policy position. And even in the public discourse that all of us have been engaged in, we are hearing many parents who say, we can see the evidence. They see in their neighborhoods, they know in their own families, 13, 14, 15-year-olds who are pregnant or HIV positive. So the evidence is where we live, that there is something that is going on that is different perhaps to when we were younger, that we need to make sure that we really support our children. So it's not everybody that's saying no. And I think this opportunity of the consultation gives us the opportunity to share with South Africans the evidence, and we can put it on our website and make sure that other people can also reference it. I think it's important that we do so.
Well, impressive words thereby from Dr. Faith, because surely these kids do go to public bathrooms in cities and shopping centers, and they come across condoms displayed in those bathrooms. If you'd like to join us on today's discussion, please call us on 011-714-5497 or 5498. Don't go away, stay with us.
SABC News seeks to be the biggest, the most extensive and diverse news organization on the continent. Our mission is to provide accurate and credible news and current affairs programming throughout the day. We are committed to covering every part of the continent. We reflect the world to Africa and Africa to the world. SABC News, Africa's news leader. now available throughout the continent.
Welcome back. This has been a very, very hot topic here in the studio. Let's again go through some of your tweets and hear what you are saying. Some of them is sufficiently sangweni. It's a good idea because in those levels they're already sexually active. I guess if this, that's medicine, I mean, I think if this goes ahead, government will procure special sizes because the current size won't fit primary school kids. I don't think that's what it's meant for. Janine Blom says ridiculous, but what do you expect from the government? All combined have an IQ of 10. And let's pick up on those comments. There's a comment from from Janine Blom who says it's ridiculous. Who wants to pick that one up?
I'd like to pick up the second comment. You know,
the sizes.
Yes, because it's something that has been raised with us by young people in particular. And to say that, you know, we're not unique in the world confronting these issues. Sweden, for example, you know, have adolescent size, you know, condoms. And they've had them for at least the past 15 years that I'm aware of, and probably going back there. So we'll have to really deal with those issues. But, you know, let's not forget what we are aiming to do here. And I think it's important for me to take the opportunity to indicate that there is no intention on the government or the Department of Basic Education to issue willy-nilly condoms to 10-year-olds. This is not the intention of the draft document we are talking about. It's largely a package of services and education that we think has to be strengthened and implemented, particularly in secondary schools. However, as we've indicated, the conversation must begin in primary schools.
And that is why probably, Dr. Faith, it would be important to have used those condoms to teach the kids, yes. Not necessarily give it to them, but where the teacher teaches the kids about condom use and how important condoms are, not necessarily giving them to use.
Yes, and they've said that to us also. They said to us it's not good enough just to tell us about it, because in the heat of the moment, when the pressure is really on, you should have practiced it in a much more comfortable environment to know how to use it. But like I said again, I want to reiterate, it is really going to be strengthened and implemented in secondary schools. We want to talk to young people. The conversation must happen prior to that, which is what's going to happen in primary schools. No, and the implementation modalities have not been finalized, because I think that's where people are worried about, of how we're going to do it, by whom, when, you know, are they going to be in all the ablution facilities? Are they going to be issued, you know, one textbook, one condom kind of approach? No. We're still discussing that, because in fact it's one of the things that we are embarking on. We are asking for the evidence, because we want to find out from countries that have been doing this ahead of us, what is the most cost-effective and more effective implementation modalities for distribution condoms in schools, because there are various opportunities. You can either give it to peer educators who are in schools already and young people access it from that. We can give it to an adult, which we've heard the evidence is that that's not the best way to do it. And so we need to talk about also the school health program, where there are nurses that come to schools and other health workers that can also distribute, as well as the issue of having mobile services, because those then are able to reach more learners with less resources. So we need to be looking at all possibilities, and I don't think South Africa is diverse. We are unlikely to have one mechanism only. We need to be exploring as many as is possible, making sure that all the time is really to enable access, because that's where the real challenge has been up to this time.
Nomusa, during the break, you spoke to us about a project that you run at SATU, that SATU is running amongst the teachers.
Yes. It came as a result of the mobile. You mentioned the issue of
mobile clinics.
Yes, SATU, we do have a mobile clinic, but we have been targeting mainly our teachers. It goes all over to where we are. We have events. We do testing not only on HIV and AIDS, but on issues on TB, on high blood pressure, on diabetes, and it's like more of a wellness thing. We also on the issue of HIV and AIDS, we are intervening in that we have done male circumcision of learners in schools, but for that we consult with parents. We consult even with our mobile clinics. We are not, encouraging learners, because we feel first it should be dealt with parents first on the issue of HIV testing, and then on the issue of male circumcision, parents have got to give consent, and then we engage, and then we do male circumcision.
I would want to believe, Nombulelo, from what is being said, we spoke about the issue of this being built into the curriculum. And one of the other things we spoke earlier is about the healthy living, the wash your hands syndrome. Mm-hmm. But recently we've seen many of our schools, especially in the townships and rural areas, are struggling with sanitation problems. And those things could really lead to very bad sickness or some of these things we're trying to avoid.
I'm obviously going to be very equal education about this. We're very concerned. I think we're very concerned about the state of particularly our sanitation in schools. But this does speak to the question of health and wellness generally. And this actually speaks to, for example, if the Department of Basic Education decided that the best way to distribute these condoms would be through putting them in these ablution facilities. If you go to Limpopo, where there's it's mud schools and there's pit latrines, we don't know how that would work. We don't know where you would put them. The facilities don't work great. The learners don't even want to go into those toilets. It's not. They don't want to associate themselves with that. So it is quite a problem. Of course, we don't want to say that this particular policy is being aided ahead of the issue of dealing with school infrastructure. We think that we must look at these things definitely in tandem. As we think about, how do we make sure that, learners are healthy in their schools? How do they get access to proper health care? How do they get access to condoms? How do they get access to health education? We have to think about, their environment. Is the environment enabling for that? And if really their infrastructure, like their toilets, is not, okay, then we have a bit of a problem.
Well, when we come back from the break, we've got Dr. Faith to respond to this issue of the infrastructure that is not conducive to the kind of things we're talking about today. If you'd like to join us, you can still call us on 011-714-5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Recourse. Stay with us.
Information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are two things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
Welcome back. We seem to have a very active Twitter community today. Let's have a look at what the tweets are saying on this subject. Especially says Beck is a tweeter of note. Let it be so. It can even be more easier to know the pros and cons for being sexually active. Kenneth Mungeka says we need to rebuild homes, the units of society. Those units must teach children right and wrongs, and first is sex before marriage. Teddy, 31st of May, said the Bill of Rights, being the governor of wrong perceptions about children's rights, makes it hard to instill discipline. I want us to, Dr. Faith, probably you want to first respond to the issue of infrastructure we spoke about earlier, and then I'll give the other two ladies to talk to us about the very difficult issue of instilling discipline because of what the Bill of Rights requires us to do.
Yes.
The infrastructure we spoke about earlier, the distribution of condoms.
I mean, we agree, and we don't disagree with equal education at all on this matter. We believe that the physical environment as well as the mood, the social environment of the schools are absolutely critical to teaching and learning. So to support good teachers and the materials that we have is important, that also children are healthy as well as our teachers. So absolutely, and this intervention is one of a myriad that we're implementing to try and really address those issues. So yeah, I have nothing to add on that matter. We believe it's important.
Yes, there was a tweet, Nomulelo and Nomusa, around the Bill of Rights that actually makes it difficult to instill discipline. And somebody asked me and said, who said instilling discipline is to beating up a child?
Yeah.
A lot of people, one would say that is a very conservative view, The Bill of Rights is there to ensure that children access their rights, that their rights are protected, and we have to protect their rights as teachers, as schools, as parents, as communities. For every right there is a responsibility. Children need to be taught that for every right that they have, there must be responsibility. So in that way, then it makes them to be responsible, and when a child is responsible, then that instills discipline. So it's a matter of finding new ways of ensuring that the rights that the children have, they don't abuse them.
I mean, I think, absolutely, not only is it very conservative, but to really think that to suppress a child's right or to dictate what the right of a child is okay, I think is a very wrong thing. And that is often the narrative of abuse of children, that, people think that they can do as they please to children because they shouldn't have rights, they don't have agency at all. And I think that we must sort of do away with that type of thing. That is why it's so important for them to be heard on this policy, but also generally to be, their views to be taken seriously. I think that we've seen that it's always going to be a very difficult thing to get something like this done. But I think that as a country, we really need to stand firm on this. I think, it is long overdue. And I think if we continue thinking to be in denial, to think that children are not having sex, to think that children don't know what is out there, I think that, we may be headed for a crisis. This policy, by the way, is in line with our National Development Plan. And that plan is to say that we mustn't have new infections at a certain point in time. The Department of Education is standing up and saying we're doing something about this. We want to make sure that we contribute to the National Development Plan, and I think that we should all want to do this and want to be counted with the Department of Basic Education.
Dr. Faith, let's take it from what Nomulelo was saying about children are sexually active, and we can see that by the number of pregnant students, the teenage pregnancy. We can see that. To what extent do we go around helping those who are already pregnant and those who are looking on to how the others are being treated?
I take the point that was made earlier that the draft
document is just hold that thought. Let's hold that thought. You can come back to us. Let's take this call from Emmanuel from Limpopo. Emmanuel, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
Okay. I'm happy about the comments the lady was making about the condom issues.
Yes, go ahead,
Hello?
Emmanuel.
Yes. What my comments and what I want to try to say, if we can check now how the way the AIDS is killing the young people, AIDS is destroying a lot of people. And if we say we want to depend on condom, I can say it won't help us. What we need to now introduce is the young people need to change their mind to take the word of God so that they can be away from a lot of things which put them into the ace. Because if we can check, you can use a condom, but the condom can blast.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you. We've got the gist of your program. We've got the gist of your story. Probably, Dr. Faith, in closing, because we've got very little time, you can talk to us about what the department is doing for the teenagers who are already pregnant and how do we prevent this from happening in your closing statement.
Yes. We'll look again at the draft and make sure that it deals with issues of pregnancy. It's been pointed out to us that it doesn't adequately address that. Learners who are pregnant still maintain and retain their right to basic education. So they cannot be expelled from school. For us, it's really important that they are able to attend school and that they complete their schooling and are given sufficient time, to go deliver, but more importantly, to come back into the schooling system. And that's going to require all of South Africa to support them, because not only is that their future, but also they are now child that they've born that are dependent on making sure that they get, good quality education. What I would like to say, in conclusion, is that we really have learned a lot from the public engagement that we're having. South Africans must take the opportunity to once again inform. The draft policy is still open for comment. The email address to send your written comments, because you want those comments in writing, please, is draft HIV policy, all lowercase, at dbe.gov.za, or you can go to our email, to our website, which is www.education.gov.za. We would like you can then download it, have a look at it, but please, everybody must provide their input. And really, it's going to take all of us of South Africa, to really make sure that this is through. And we feel it's really, really important, not only for the health, but also for the economic and social development of our nation into the future. So we support, we're happy for all the support we're getting, but also for those views that are going to assist us to do better moving forward.
Well, in 30 seconds, Nombulelo.
Just to say that I think exactly what Dr. Faith is saying, we should be still commenting, but I think that the department should be deliberately soliciting comments from learners, more comments from learners. That is very important for the legitimacy of this policy, even more relevant. And I think that obviously, like we've already given we've already sent a very lengthy submission, and we hope those things are addressed in the policy when it comes out again.
Well, ladies, it is very clear, my apologies, Nomusa, it is very clear that 1 hour is too short for us to discuss this problem and try and sort out all the problems of our societies on this program. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for your input. It was great, really. I enjoyed listening to ladies for a change. I've always had men here. And this has been Right and Recourse. This program is repeated at 10 tonight and at 5 on Monday mornings. From all of us here in the studio, thank you to our guests and good afternoon.
Everybody wants to look like Superman, and unfortunately nothing in a bottle, nothing in a capsule form will give you muscle. It's hard work, in fact it's smart work.
It is time sportsmen and women realize that supplements may be contaminated with banned substances and that this can affect their health in the long term.
The only way a supplement can be regarded as safe from banned substances is if the entire supplement batch is tested and cleared by an accredited anti-doping laboratory.
Join me on Health Talk every Saturday morning between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. as we unpack current health stories.